Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining me today. I'm Lorna Schumann with the Illinois State Museum, and I'm here at the Research and Collections Center, and we're going to get to see some interesting pieces of the collection that help us learn a little bit about how we get our food. So, we get a lot of our food by the help of insects like our bees, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But let's first talk about our food. What you see in front of me right here is some of the food that we eat, like the pumpkin. In fact, we're one of the top producers of pumpkins in the United States. That's pretty cool. Another plant that we produce a lot of is corn. I'm sure many of you have eaten this, and you've seen lots of fields of corn also. And then there's tomatoes. Some of you may have seen tomatoes that you grow in your own yard, maybe in a pot, or you get them at the store. And then there's apples, which we get from apple trees. All of these three over here are very important, and we have the helpers that help them, which are insects. But for corn, that's a different story. Corn actually does something we call wind pollination. So what does that mean? Well, corn grows on a stalk, and in order to get pollinated, in order to change from the stalk into an actual corn, you have to actually have pollen move from one corn stalk to another. And how that happens is through the wind. So the wind blows through the corn stalks, it moves the pollen from one to another and helps it turn into corn. So corn isn't really affected by the bees that we have. However, these other three all are very dependent. That means that you have to have their helpers in order to help them get to what we eat. And those are our bees. Let me introduce you to them. This first one is called a carpenter bee. If you look at his body, it's all black with this bright orange or yellow wings on it. But here's something else. You see his butt? It's all shiny. I know, that's really funny, but I bet you won't forget it. Our next one is our American bumblebee, and she is the one that you often think of as being the bee that you're seeing, but it's actually a bumblebee. They're much larger than other bees. And you see that they still have the yellow and black stripes on the body and the yellow or orange type wings on them. And they're really kind of big. They're like the size of my thumb almost. And the last one is the honeybee. And the honeybee is the one that we often think of, the one that lives in hives. It has the black and yellow stripes on it and the small wings off to the side. It is the only bee that isn't native here to what we call the United States. It came over with Europeans when they first came here a long time ago. The other two, the American bumblebee and the carpenter bee, are native to Illinois, and they're really cool to look at. So all of these help us get our food that we have here. And how they do that is they fly from plant to plant. Now, when they go to a plant, what they do is they land in the plant to get the nectar. When they get there, there's little pollen, like little yellow balls that we can kind of see, but not really well, that kind of glue themselves or stick to, like Velcro, to their legs. So think about it. How many of you have ever walked out into a field or through a bunch of flowers and you look down at your pants and all of a sudden, what do you have? Yellow all over your shoes, your socks, your pants, your clothes, whatever you're wearing. That's pollen. And that's what our bees are picking up. So once they have it and they've been in the flower for a little bit on a plant, then they go to the next flower and they drop that pollen in the flower. Now this has to happen between like a tomato to a tomato plant or an apple to an apple plant or pumpkin to a pumpkin plant. And they go to the next flower, and when they're there, the pollen falls off. And that causes the flower to change. And the flower closes up, and it starts forming the fruit that we see here. Many of you probably seen where the flower gets a little hard ball on it at the very end, and that's the actual beginning of the fruit. And then inside the fruit, if we were to cut this open, we would find seeds in there. And that's how it changes from a flower to a fruit to a seed. And those are all important. And the whole reason it changes is because of our little helper insects, our bees. Well, I hope you learned a little bit more about how we get the food that we eat. And I want to thank you for joining me today. Take care.